Most people spend money on their yard every single spring. New plants, new color, new everything because whatever they planted last year didn't come back. That's not bad luck. That's annuals. That's the gardening industry's business model. Sell you something beautiful that dies so you come back next year and buy it again. Perennials don't work that way. Plant a perennial once and it comes back, every year on its own, without you doing anything. By its third or fourth year, it's larger, fuller, and more established than it was when you put it in the ground, and it still hasn't cost you a cent since that first planting. The yards that look like a professional maintained them. They weren't replanted every spring. They were planted once, with the right plants, and then left alone to do what perennials do. I'm giving you 12 of those plants today. 12 perennials that come back every year, need almost no maintenance, and make your yard look like it was professionally designed. By plant 12, you'll understand why professional landscapers put it in every project. It looks expensive, it's nearly impossible to kill, and it does all the work while you take the credit. Hit subscribe. Here we go. 1. Heuchera, the year-round color machine. Most yard color disappears by October. Heuchera's doesn't. It's one of the only perennials that delivers genuine visual interest every single month of the year, not just during bloom season, but in January and February through every season a garden goes through. Heuchera, commonly called coral bells, is grown primarily for its foliage, and that foliage comes in a range that most people find genuinely startling when they first encounter it. Deep burgundy, caramel orange, lime green, silver with purple veining, near black with metallic sheen, electric amber that catches afternoon light like stained glass. The breeding work done on Heuchera over the last 20 years has made it one of the most visually diverse plants in cultivation. The flowers are a bonus. In late spring and early summer, wiry stems rise above the mound and produce tiny bell-shaped flowers, usually coral, pink, or white, that hummingbirds find irresistible. But the foliage is the feature. It persists from spring through hard frost. In mild climates, it is essentially evergreen. In the landscape, Heuchera functions as a living color anchor. It holds a border's visual interest when everything around it is between bloom cycles. It provides contrast against flowers. It makes everything around it look better. Traditional use, as the color foil at the front of a mixed border, massed under trees as a weed-suppressing ground cover that provides color year-round, paired with hostas in a shade planting for a combination that photographs beautifully in every season. Partial shade to full shade preferred. Water when dry. No deadheading. No fussing. Just color 12 months a year. 2. Catmint, the border plant that takes care of itself. There is a look in garden design that people pay landscapers thousands of dollars to achieve, the soft, romantic, overflowing border that looks like it has been growing for years and simply found its own perfect form. Catmint is how you get that look for the price of a single plant. Catmint's soft, silver-green mounds produce lavender-blue flower spikes from late spring through summer. The stems relax outward naturally, softening hard edges and flowing between other plants with effortless grace. This is the plant in every English garden photograph, every French cottage border, every Italian villa planting that makes you stop and want to know what it is. It is extraordinarily drought-tolerant. It handles heat. It is deer-resistant, pest-resistant, and essentially problem-free. Cut it back by half after the first bloom flush, and it rebounds with a full second bloom in late summer that carries into fall. 2 waves of lavender blue from a single plant per season. The fragrance is an additional gift. Catmint smells of light mint and herbs when you brush against it. Planted along a pathway or near a seating area, it releases that scent every time someone passes. That's the kind of sensory detail that makes a yard feel designed rather than assembled. Traditional use, along the front of a border where stems can relax and flow forward naturally, as edging along a pathway for fragrance and soft color, paired with upright roses or salvias for a classic cottage combination. Sun to partial shade, water when dry, that's the entire care requirement. 3. Lavender, the plant that perfumes your whole yard. Lavender is one of the most beautiful, most useful, and most frequently mishandled plants in gardening. The mishandling comes from one mistake: overwatering. Fix that, and lavender in the ground is essentially maintenance-free. Lavender evolved in thin, rocky, alkaline Mediterranean soils that drain almost instantaneously and receive no supplemental irrigation. In well-draining garden soil with good sun, lavender replicates those conditions exactly. It wants to dry out between waterings. It wants full sun. It wants to be left alone. The payoff for this minimal treatment is extraordinary. Silver-green aromatic foliage that looks beautiful even when not in bloom. Flower spikes in deep purple, soft pink, or white from early to midsummer. The fragrance, one of the most studied and documented aromatherapy scents in existence, released continuously from the foliage every time the air moves through your yard. Compact varieties work as border plants and low hedges. Hidcote stays tight and upright to about 12 inches. Munstead is slightly larger and one of the most cold-hardy options. Little Lottie produces soft pink blooms and stays genuinely compact. All overwinter reliably in zones 5 and above when given good drainage. Traditional use, as a low, fragrant hedge flanking a front walkway, as a mass planting on a sunny slope where nothing else wants to grow, harvested for dried bundles, sachets, and culinary use. The plant that works as hard in the kitchen as it does in the garden. 4. Hosta, the plant that owns the shade. Every yard has a shaded area where nothing wants to grow, under a mature tree, along a north-facing fence, on the side of the house where sun never reaches. Most gardeners spend years fighting that shade, planting things that struggle, look weak, and eventually die. Hosta is the plant that ends that fight permanently. Hosta is the undisputed king of shade gardening. It thrives in conditions that would kill most plants, produces foliage that makes sun-loving plants look plain by comparison, and returns every spring larger and more impressive than the year before. A single hosta planted in a bare, shaded spot will become a focal point in 3 years. The variety in hosta is staggering. Some in substance reaches 4 feet across with leaves the size of dinner plates in golden yellow. Halcyon produces cool blue-gray foliage that seems to glow in dim light. Patriot is deep green edged in crisp white. Miniature varieties like mouse ears stay compact enough for border edges. There is a hosta for every shaded space in every garden. Hosta is essentially indestructible once established. It tolerates deep shade, dry shade, and root competition from trees. The only thing that genuinely threatens it is deer. In deer-heavy areas, choose the more resistant varieties or protect young plants until they are established. Plant it, water it through its first summer, and then leave it alone. It will do the rest. Traditional use, massed under deciduous trees where their canopy creates challenging growing conditions, along a shaded house foundation as a permanent weed-suppressing border, combined with Astilbe and Heuchera for a complete shade garden that provides color, texture, and structure from spring through fall. 5. Salvia, the repeat bloomer that lasts all season. Perennial salvias, particularly Salvia nemorosa and its cultivars, represent one of the best-kept secrets in low-maintenance landscaping. They bloom early. They rebloom reliably. They tolerate drought. They attract pollinators. They don't require deadheading. And they come back every year looking better than the last. Caradonna is arguably the most beautiful of the group. Deep purple-blue flower spikes on near-black stems from May through June. Cut it back after bloom and it produces a second full flush in August. East Friesland covers itself in rich violet blue. May night produces the deepest indigo purple in the group. All are compact, 12 to 18 inches, and well-suited to border life. The foliage is aromatic, slightly rough-textured, and deer-resistant. The square stems are architecturally interesting. Between bloom cycles, the plant holds its form cleanly rather than collapsing into a mess. Salvia nemorosa thrives in hot, dry conditions, the kind of conditions that stress most garden plants. It actually performs better in poor soil than in rich, amended beds because the lean conditions mimic the Mediterranean landscape it evolved in. Full sun, well-drained soil, water when dry, no deadheading required, traditional use, as the vertical mid-border element in a cottage or prairie-style planting. Massed in drifts for a bold color statement that repeats all season, paired with catmint at the border front for a soft, romantic combination that blooms from May through September. 6. Black-eyed Susan, the plant that pays for itself. This is the one I mentioned in the hook. Black-eyed Susan in a yard looks expensive. It looks intentional. It looks like someone who knows what they're doing put it there. And it requires almost nothing to achieve that effect. Rudbeckia fulgida goldsturm is the landscape variety that professional designers reach for because it performs reliably in a way that justifies billing. Compact to 24 inches, smothered in bright golden yellow daisy flowers with dark centers from July through October, self-cleaning, drought-tolerant, and returning every year with the same reliable performance. The bloom period is extraordinary. 3 to 4 months of continuous color without a single deadheading. The spent flowers age gracefully, the dark seed heads providing textural interest as the season progresses. In autumn, the seed heads feed goldfinches and add structural beauty to the fall landscape. In winter, they hold their form in frost and snow. Black-eyed Susan spreads slowly over time, filling in naturally and creating the kind of dense, established planting that looks like it has been there for decades. They tolerate poor soil, heat, and drought. They are the definition of a plant that rewards neglect. Traditional use, massed in drifts for a high-impact summer display, combined with ornamental grasses for a naturalistic prairie planting, at the back of a sunny border where the height provides structure. The plant that makes neighbors slow down when they drive past. 7. Coneflower. The plant that attracts a crowd. Not the crowd of neighbors, though that too, but the crowd of pollinators that will find a stand of coneflowers within days of planting and return every single day for the rest of the season. Echinacea performs best in compact varieties for managed borders. Magnus stays relatively upright at 24 inches with large, deep pink blooms. Pow Wow Wild Berry is genuinely compact at 16 inches with vivid magenta flowers. White Swan produces clean, pure white blooms with orange cones that photograph beautifully. The blooms are long-lasting. Individually, each flower holds for 2 to 3 weeks before the petals reflex and the cone darkens. A stand of coneflowers provides weeks of changing visual interest from the fresh, open bloom through the architectural dried cone phase. Leave the cone standing through winter and goldfinches will work through them methodically for months. Coneflowers spread slowly by self-seeding, gradually filling in and creating the kind of naturalistic drift that looks intentional rather than planted. Drought-tolerant once established, pest-resistant, deer-resistant. No deadheading required. Traditional use, massed in a pollinator garden, in the middle of a sunny border where the height provides structure, combined with black-eyed Susan and Salvia for a 3-season planting that looks better every year. The yard feature that makes visitors ask what those plants are. 8. Daylily, the plant that refuses to fail. There is a short list of perennials that will grow in almost any condition, poor soil, clay, drought, neglect, competition, and still produce flowers. Daylily is at the top of that list. It is the most forgiving, most adaptable flowering perennial available, and it looks far better than it has any right to given how little it demands. Hemerocallis, the true daylily, is an entirely different plant from the Easter lily or any bulb lily. It is an indestructible perennial with strap-like foliage that emerges in spring and produces large, trumpet-shaped flowers from early summer into fall depending on the variety. Stella de Oro is the compact rebloomer that covers itself in golden yellow from June through September. Happy Returns is similar but with soft cream yellow flowers. Pardon Me delivers deep red blooms on compact plants ideal for front-of-border use. Each individual flower lasts only 1 day, hence the name, but a mature plant produces dozens of buds in succession, providing weeks of continuous color. Deadheading spent flowers is completely optional. The plant handles it without help. Daylilies spread slowly and fill in beautifully, suppressing weeds and requiring no division for years. They tolerate drought, heavy clay, and periods of neglect that would kill most other perennials. Once established, they are among the most maintenance-free plants in existence. Traditional use, massed along a fence line or property border where they fill in and provide color all summer. Mixed in a sunny border for mid-season height and color. Planted on slopes where their root system holds soil and their spread creates low-maintenance coverage. The plant that asks for nothing and returns everything. 9. Dianthus, the fragrant plant that blooms all season. Perennial Dianthus, particularly the Knockout series and similar long-blooming compact cultivars, represents one of the most overlooked perennials in landscaping. Most gardeners are familiar with annual Dianthus and dismiss the category. The perennial forms are entirely different in their performance and their longevity. Perennial Dianthus produces fringed flowers in deep pink, white, red, and bicolor combinations that bloom from late spring through fall with minimal interruption. The gray-green, strap-like foliage is attractive throughout the season and has a distinctly silver-blue appearance that provides cool contrast in summer borders. The entire plant is compact, typically 10 to 14 inches, making it ideal for border edges and pathway planting. The fragrance is the feature that most gardeners aren't prepared for. Dianthus smells of cloves and spice, warm, complex, genuinely lovely, and planted along a walkway or near a seating area, it perfumes the space continuously on warm days. It is one of very few fragrant perennials that reblooms this reliably. Dianthus is drought-tolerant, heat-tolerant, and deer-resistant. It wants full sun and excellent drainage. Once established, it is essentially problem-free. Traditional use, as edging along a front walk or pathway for fragrance and long-season color, in drifts at the front of a sunny border, combined with lavender for a Mediterranean-scented planting that perfumes the whole yard. 10. Astilbe, the perennial that solves the shade problem. Most yards have a shaded area where nothing wants to grow. Under a tree, along a north-facing fence, beside the house where the sun never reaches. Astilbe is the perennial that turns those problem spots into the best-looking part of the yard. Astilbe is one of the very few flowering perennials that genuinely thrives without direct sun, and doesn't just survive, but produces a floral display that would be impressive in any light. Feathery plumes in deep red, hot pink, white, and lavender rise above finely divided foliage from early to midsummer. The bloom period lasts 3 to 4 weeks. The dried plumes that remain afterward are architecturally interesting and hold through fall. The foliage is a feature in itself. Glossy, deeply cut and lush, it gives shaded areas the kind of density and visual richness that usually requires sun to achieve. A mass planting of Astilbe under a tree canopy looks like something a professional shade gardener spent years designing. Astilbe wants moisture and shade. In consistently moist soil with filtered light, it is essentially problem-free. Fennel delivers deep crimson. Bridal veil produces elegant white. Visions in pink is compact at 16 inches. All spread slowly to form dense, weed-suppressing colonies. Traditional use, massed under deciduous trees, along a shaded house foundation. Paired with hostas and Heuchera for a complete shade garden that requires only water and looks incredible from spring through fall. 11. Creeping Jenny, the golden ground cover that never stops. Ground covers are where most landscaping fails. The options are either boring, plain pachysandra, English ivy, or invasive, spreading beyond their intended area and taking over. Creeping Jenny is neither. It spreads exactly as intended, covers ground beautifully, and provides a color that no other ground cover can match. Lysimachia nummularia aurea, golden creeping jenny, produces small rounded leaves in a chartreuse gold that reads as luminous in almost any light condition. The trailing stems root where they touch soil, spreading to fill an area without becoming aggressive. In mild climates it is evergreen. In colder zones it disappears in winter and returns reliably in spring, filling back in quickly. The gold chartreuse color works as a contrast to nearly everything around it. Dark green Hosta foliage, deep purple Heuchera, the rich green of established lawn. In a shaded border, creeping jenny provides the same light-catching effect that a designer achieves with expensive lighting. It does it for the price of a single plant that multiplies itself. Traditional use, as a weed-suppressing ground cover under trees and shrubs, along the edge of water features or garden paths where it softens hard lines, combined with shade perennials for a ground-level layer that completes a planting design without requiring any maintenance once established. 12. Russian sage, the plant that looks expensive and asks for nothing. This is the one I mentioned in the hook. Russian sage, Perovskia atroplicifolia, is the plant professional landscapers put in every project that needs to look polished without requiring maintenance. It has silver-white stems, lavender-blue flowers that bloom from July through October, and an airy, billowing form that sways in the slightest breeze. It looks like it costs 3 times what it actually costs to install. The silver-white stems are architectural year-round. They persist through winter, providing structure in the landscape when everything else has gone dormant. In spring, soft lavender-blue foliage emerges from the base. By midsummer, the plant is covered in hazy blue-violet flower spikes that create a color effect unlike anything else in the perennial world. The overall look is somewhere between lavender and wisteria, soft, romantic, unmistakably designed. Russian sage is drought-tolerant to an extreme degree. It evolved in the dry steppes of Central Asia and actually performs better in lean, well-drained soil than in rich, amended beds. It wants full sun and neglect. Overwatering and over-fertilizing are the only ways to damage it. Given the right conditions, and the right conditions are essentially just sun and poor drainage, it is virtually indestructible. Cut it back hard in early spring down to 8 to 12 inches, and it grows back with the same vigor, the same form, the same billowing silver-blue presence. That is the only maintenance it requires. 1 cut per year. Then step back and let it perform. Traditional use. As a mid-border to back-of-border specimen, where its height and airy texture create a backdrop for other plants. Massed in a large drift for a bold landscape statement. Paired with black-eyed Susan for a gold and silver combination that looks like it was designed by someone who charged for the privilege. The plant that makes a yard look finished. 12 plants. One idea running through all of them. The right perennial in the right spot doesn't need you. It comes back every year. It fills in, spreads naturally, and looks better each season because it was given conditions that match what it actually is. Not a temporary display. Not something you replant every spring. A plant with a future in your yard. Low-maintenance landscaping isn't about doing less. It's about choosing once and then stepping back. Choose Catmint over lobelia and stop deadheading. Choose Heuchera over impatiens and gain a plant that comes back every year instead of dying in October. Choose Russian sage over ornamental kale and gain a plant that looks expensive from July through the first hard frost and then persists as a sculptural element all winter. The yards that look professionally maintained, the ones that look better in September than they did in May, the ones people slow down to look at, weren't worked on harder than everyone else's. They were planted more thoughtfully. The work happened once at planting time. Everything after that was patience and the right plants. Pick 3 or 4 from this list that match your light and your honest watering habits. Plant them this spring. Come back in 2 seasons and tell me what you think. Drop a comment with which one you're already growing and which one you're trying this year. I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now. New video every week. We're just getting started. See you in the next one.